Okay, everybody, I think we're going to get started. If everyone could please take a seat. Come on in. I think you all should find that we know we're between you and lunch, and that's a dangerous place to be sometimes, so we brought snacks. And a word of advice is to choose carefully. You may hear why later. And so I just want to welcome everybody. My name is Josh Nauer. I'm the CEO and a co-founder of Ryza. We're a software company based here in Pittsburgh. And it's my distinct privilege and honor to be able to bring to you a client that we work with. We've been working with Gamut for the past year. I think we started in January. And very happy to be able to, what you're going to hear about today is how, we've been talking a lot about the structure of big data and how you find things and all the rest, the mechanics of it. We're going to be talking about the business side of big data, right? How do we actually make money from this? And how do we help drive the types of decisions that are going to get ROI for the people that we work with and work for? So, very excited to introduce Rachel DiCola, who is the Senior Director of Research and Consumer Insights at Gamut. She oversees the company's research and analytics teams, who are charged with arming Gamut's sellers with actionable data through all phases of the ad sales cycle. Rachel has been a Cox. She's been a Cox veteran. Gamut is a Cox Media Group company, and she's been at Cox serving the company for nearly a decade in a variety of different research roles, from television to digital to consumer insights. So we'll be hearing from Rachel in a minute. We also have Matt Murphy, who is the Vice President of Product Strategy and Channel Partnerships for Gamut. And in this role, he's responsible for evaluating emerging advertising technologies relative to marketplace demand and aligning Gamut's sales efforts with the best-of-breed products and cross-platform market strategies. So Matt has over 15 years of experience in sales leadership, business development, and product strategy in the advertising and technology industries. So that's the last that I'm going to read up here, just to be clear. So we're really excited to once again have our customer that we've been working with to help make sure that the ad sales teams at Gamut have the data that they need and are able to interact with it directly, so that when they're making pitches to people, they're bringing all the power of billions of points of data. They have that needle that they're looking for specifically in the haystack is the right sales pitch for that advertiser at that moment in time. So with that, Rachel, the stage is yours.
Okay, so we'll just start with a little introduction about Gamut. Okay, like Josh said, my name is Rachel DiCola. I'm Senior Director of Research and Consumer Insights at Gamut, which is smart media from Cox. And Gamut offers a broad spectrum of media solutions for both buyers and sellers, from programmatic to direct and even cross-platform. So what makes our media smart, right? I like to think that it's advanced technology plus human understanding, which is why I'm so excited to be here today speaking to all you folks with the Pittsburgh Technology Council and with Ryza, because especially about data, because I feel like data sometimes gets lumped into that advanced technology part of the equation, where it absolutely deserves to be. It's vast and it's complex, but I also believe that it can be made understandable and usable by even those folks within our organization that are not particularly data-minded to achieve real business results. So today we thought I would present to you, and I'm thrilled to present to you, a Gamut data snack analysis. And so this is something that we prepared for one of our sellers to go out to build a plan for a campaign for a snack brand. And Gamut, again, we're very lucky at Gamut to have a bunch of really great data provider partners, and some of which you're going to see here featured today. But as you probably know, you could have 1,000 data providers, you could have rows and rows of numbers, you could have spreadsheets from here to Highland Park. But if you don't have a tool that helps you bring that together, you can get buried pretty quickly. So that's why we're so happy to have a partner and lucky to have a partner in Ryza that we use as a data aggregation and business intelligence tool to help us bring it all together to make it understandable for our sellers. And so some of the data visualizations that you're going to see here are brought to you by, powered by Ryza. Okay, so snacks. Gamut, of course, offers national advertising solutions, but coming from our rich heritage with Cox Media Group, we like to consider ourselves to be local experts. So my first question to myself in this analysis was, are snacks regional? Are there parts of the country that we should be targeting differently than others based on snacking habits? So we looked at some sweets. We looked at candy first, and we see that there's pockets here and there around the country. Pretty much everyone in the country likes candy. There's not a ton of regionality there. Ice cream, on the other hand, seems to be condensed in the southeast. Makes sense, it's hot down there. They want a cool treat. And we see a trend there in the southeast with sweets and cookies too. So that extends a little bit further into Texas and then up into the mid-Atlantic, where you'll see, of course, Pennsylvania and Pittsburgh are included there. The fine folks of Pennsylvania and Pittsburgh are not too picky about their snacks. They like pretty much everything you'll see. But New York, on the other hand, where Matt and I are coming from today, is a little bit more picky. They're not participating in this cookie trend. They're hard to please. So we looked at salty snacks. Potato chips, like candy, everyone seems to like them. Pockets here and there, not a ton of regionality. Pretzels, on the other hand, seem to be the Northeast's favorite snack. And this makes a lot of sense to me. Pretzels came to this country through Pennsylvania Dutch country, where some of those fine plants are still in existence today. So, and again, New York not participating, we don't like pretzels. Tortilla chips, salty snacks, I guess seem to be cultural because here we have the Southwest favorite snack with tortilla chips. And healthy snacks, I guess there's a reason that the folks of the mountain regions are called crunchy granola. They like to eat granola, right? And the calorie-controlled packs, you'll see a correlation there between sweet snacks and with calorie-controlled. So they're trying to balance both, I guess. But again, New York's not participating. So I got a little jealous. We know what Pennsylvanians like to eat. We know what other regions of the country, what the heck do New Yorkers eat, right? So we looked at all sorts of things. We even went and looked at pizza, hot dogs. What the heck do New Yorkers eat? Well, they eat bagels, of course, right? Yeah, right. Best in the world. Okay, so now we know where they are regionally. Now, who are these folks? Are there differences between the people who like to eat certain snacks? We looked at something simple like, we looked at something simple like a national median income and how the different snacks compare. Sweet eaters in general have a slightly lower household income than the national median. Pretzel eaters, on the other hand, enjoy the highest household median income of salty snackers, but they're also the most exclusive, with just about 55% of households regularly buying a bag of pretzels. But far and away, the highest household income is with nutritional and energy snackers. And we looked at some ages. Gelatin eaters, for whatever reason, are the oldest of snackers. While chewing gum chewers are the youngest. And again, those nutritional and energy snackers, this is a coveted demographic. They're a little bit younger than the national median. And since this is election week, we have to look and see if there are any political trends here. Conservative females seem to like ice cream and sweet snacks like snack cakes. Liberal females like a little bit of everything, but especially nutritional and energy snacks. Conservative males like their salty snacks like potato chips and pretzels. while liberal males like their female counterparts like nutritional and energy snackers. Okay, so what about the middle of the roaders, those folks that are not willing to commit on politics? Well, they're not willing to commit on snacks either. There's a positive indice for almost everything, but nothing really that wild, except for maybe potato chips. So my advice to the new Congress that we've just elected is if you're looking to cross the aisle, bring a bag of potato chips. You might have some luck. Right? Okay, so how do we speak to these people? Is there a way that we craft a creative message that might resonate more with one snacker or another? So we looked at some personalities. Ice cream eaters, these guys are your smarties. They're intelligent, they're well-informed, but they're friendly and cheerful and likable. Tortilla chip eaters, these guys I like to hang around, they're fun. They're a little bit awkward, a little bit absent-minded, but they're funny and they're witty. If you're looking for a date, you might find them in the snack cake aisle. Snack cake eaters are reserved and quiet, but they're passionate and they're romantic. Watch out at movie theaters because popcorn eaters are dominating, demanding, and aggressive. And as someone that grew up working in a movie theater, I can say that's pretty much accurate. Don't ever put too much or too little of that buttery topping or you're going to hear it on the popcorn. And what about nutritional and energy snackers? These folks, I mean, real salt of the earth right there. They're creative, good, kind, benevolent, open-minded, just really great people. Okay, so we can do this type of analysis on broad categories and on, big major brands like maybe a Lay's or a Kellogg's or something like that. But what do we do if we're challenged with a brand to do some analysis on how to advertise to a product that doesn't even exist yet? What if a brand comes to us and says, we want to launch a new potato chip that is both calorie conscious and energy infused? Well, with that, we're lucky to have a partner in civic science that helped us to ask just this question and draw some analysis on it. So we asked that question, who would eat this dream chip and what do we know about them? And this is what we found. They're 21% more likely to pack a lunch. So if I'm creating that new brand of potato chip, I probably want to make a snack size. They're also 118% more likely to eat gluten-free for a medical reason, so maybe that informs the shelf space that they want to purchase. And if they're looking for a pitch man, they're 243% more likely to like Will Ferrell, so he's your guy for the dream chip. Okay, so now we know a ton of information about them. How do we begin to find them in media? How do we deliver the message at the right time so that they're thinking of our brand or our clients' brands right before they make their next purchase? All right, so what you're going to see here on the blue line is when the average person is eating. The pink line is when a candy eater is eating. They're more likely to be eating all the time. I guess there's something to be said, sugar makes you hungry, I don't know. So they have some peaks in the morning, afternoon snacks, and again in the evening. Also in the evening at 11 p.m., they're more likely to be making a purchase online. So that's a great time to hit them with a display ad so it's top of mind when in the morning they're going out for their candy fix at 10 a.m. They'll be thinking of your brand. Couch potatoes, these are our salty potato chip eaters. They're more in line with the rest of the national median or whatever with average eating, but there's some peaks in the morning and in the afternoon and in the evening again. And at 3 p.m. they're also more likely to be watching television. Good time to hit them with an ad. And we found out why these folks are eating energy and nutritional snackers. It's because they're up all night streaming internet radio. So we see there's also a peak in the morning again too when they need their next fix of energy. So hit them with a streaming online radio ad at night and they'll think of you in the morning. Okay, so we now know when to find them. Are there media devices? Is there device targeting that we can do? Or is there context targeting that might make sense for a particular brand or type of snack? So how do we find them in media? We found that with candy eaters, they're 50% more likely to be accessing the internet through a video game console. So that tells us that there's some device targeting that we can do with over-the-top players or even with in-app, in-game type of advertising. Ice cream eaters, I guess, I don't know, their hands are full, they don't have time to reach for the remote to skip through the television ads. They're 23% more likely to not skip television ads. So television's a great place to find them. And then what about our dear friends, the nutritional and energy snackers? What are they doing on their cell phones? Well, they're 2 times more likely to be accessing adult entertainment. So, okay, so we had some fun with snacks and analyzing the types of people. We go through this process every day for any number of types of categories or brands, auto, banks, schools, all this type of analysis. And you know, we're uncovering insights for the buy side, from the advertisers, and we're analyzing audiences from the media side, so that we get the value in every impression for our clients, and we bring the two together. And this analysis is not anything that really is new, that hasn't been done before. But what we found is that this type of analysis lives mostly in high-level planning at agencies or in programming departments at media companies. And what we're trying to do at Gamut is to bring it down into the hands of the actual buyers and sellers. So they're negotiating on these types of things beyond just an age, a gender, and a geo. So with that, I'd like to thank you for taking your time through the snack analysis, and thank Riza for having us here today to bring it to you as well.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So what we're going to do now is we're going to have a little bit of a Q&A with Matt and Shiri, and I'm going to start asking some questions. If folks in the audience have questions, please feel free to raise your hand and whatnot. Rachel, sorry.
That's all right.
Shiri's in the back of the audience. Anyway.
She's great.
Yes. So I think when I was watching the crowd as you were presenting, and I think that a lot of folks here probably, especially from some of the earlier presentations, you know, think of big data in terms of logistics and in terms of you know, national security and you know, really big, you know, sort of heavy things. And it was very interesting watching the crowd. I don't know if you guys noticed it, but you know, in the beginning it's like, oh, you know, nice, we're talking about where people are who consume different things and all the rest. Mm-hmm. And then when you convert it over to, and this is how you can reach them by time of day, and you know, for selecting specific types of advertisements, a lot of people started coming forward, right, and sort of thinking, oh, interesting, I get how this is relevant. How does that go in the pitch when you are, you know, in the room with a potential advertiser and showing this kind of information? What's the hook? What's the thing that like gets them to understand why data, and it's not necessarily maybe that data itself is the thing, but the presentation of that data, what's the hook? What's the thing that gets them? Well,
that is ultimately the point, right? We can profile these, you know, types of snackers for fun, right? It is fun. But unless we're finding them in media, I mean, that's the value offering that Gamut has. And Gamut is uniquely positioned, having relationships with both the advertisers and agencies, as well as our media partners, to be able to do the analysis on both sides and effectively plan a campaign, you know, bringing them together. Because, you know, our thought is that, you know, when you use data to inform your decision making as far as when to target them, where to target them, what sites, that it'll be a more effective campaign and ultimately better business results.
Cool. So Matt, you're in charge of partnerships. That's one of the things that you do, and I think that you know, when I think of, you know, the Gamut and the brand, it's not something, you know, I don't go to a Gamut website necessarily. I don't necessarily watch a Gamut specific produced, you know, thing and seeing ads. So can you talk about these partners and sort of what the business model actually is for how are people getting the, you know, how are those ads delivered and where are people seeing them?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a handful of different partners. You're a prime example of one of our partners. So you're more of what we might refer to as the back office, right? So how do we start to aggregate this information so that we can very quickly visualize it and start to tell stories about that to the audience that we're speaking specifically to? Then there's another side of the other side of partnerships that we put to place are on the sales side. So we create indirect sales channels for the media products that we ultimately build and get out in the marketplace. And so, I mean, going through the presentation and looking at the deck that we just looked at, that is really the nirvana of where we've seen where we need to go. Now, some of it's funny and some of it's a little bit goofy, but that's really to spark the interest. But ultimately what we're getting at is when we go in and speak to an agency, we're going in with information that either reinforces the strategy that they have in place today to drive that brand forward, or we're introducing ideas they've never thought about because they've never had the tools or the analytics to look at the data quite the way that we're looking at it today. So we bring things new to the table, and we kind of push ourselves out of this partner, or what I would refer to as like a product vendor, and more into that strategic thought leader within the organization that really informs not only what products you should be using or delivery methods, whether it be mobile or display, but also how and when you should do it. So we really try to help drive, you know, the why you're working with us.
So we're talking about digital delivery of ads.
That's right.
Correct? And in what form? Are these banners? Are these?
Yeah, so, well, we're actually, and I would say it's pretty much all of them, right? So we have a cross-media function where, and I will lean heavily on Rachel when we get into the television or some more of the traditional assets that we do from a research. But yeah, so digital, that would be desktop advertisements in the form of banners and video, as well as mobile, and then trying to blend those across in a single campaign and converge the two together to drive results in specific areas.
So I'm still trying to get the feel of this, right? I want folks to understand sort of, and this is not about being a commercial for Gamut in any way, it's just to understand this process, because understanding the process, and this is something that we at Ryza have learned, when you understand the process of what your customer is trying to do, and really try to understand the goals and the decisions that you're trying to go for, you can then build tools, right, that optimize to that process and cut out all the other noise, right? And when you can cut out all the other noise, the fact that you can do differential equations or other types of things with your tools, that probably isn't what the salesperson, who's the end user of this tool, is going to need to be able to do when they're presenting to a customer. So can you walk us through what, you know, either a real or a made-up example of what does a sales pitch look like in terms of an actual example of one? We were talking earlier about one that I'm sort of prompting you for.
Right. So I'll say what it used to be, right? Because
Yeah,
I think that's what's ultimately gotten us to where we are today. This space has become profoundly competitive on the media side of the fence, and that's just because there's literally no barrier to entry. And as the data providers start to get closer to some of that strategy level with the platforms that expose the actual execution, there's no barrier to entry for people to come in. And so what our salespeople got trapped in was this revolving door of who's got the newest PowerPoint presentation to basically just feature dump products on you, right? So there was really no strategy. It was like, we're everything you could possibly need, tell us what you want and we'll take the order. And in a space where that door is revolving about, you know, probably a couple hundred pitches a week for some of the large national agencies, it's really difficult to differentiate. And so by introducing this, it just informs the process. And this exercise that you saw on the deck that we did there it's profound when you go in. And it's not rocket science. Like we were joking, right? About being able to counter terrorism and stuff. Like we're definitely not doing that on the media world. So, but what we are is we're able to, again, go in and inform decisions that are less product driven and more, aligned with the goals of what the advertiser is. So if you're driving actual results and you want to look for an attribution model that shows how it's happened, that's what the data does. And it's been one of those deals where we can get out of that revolving door and start to differentiate by what we bring to the table beyond the core product side. And it's been great for us.
So,
well, what I would say, what you said about understanding your client and filtering through what is important and what is useful, that's exactly what we're trying to do with the data. So you're helping us do that, and we're doing that for each of our clients. That's ultimately the point. We have, we try not to say that we have a, big data. We probably have medium data, right? But still, it needs to be made into something that's not a spreadsheet that the sellers will understand, because these folks are not, quants, right? I'm not a quant, but it can be used. We use data every day. We just don't realize that we do it. And so that's what we're trying to do, is take all these data sets that we have and make it so they don't even quite realize it, but that it's valuable and more effective.
And one of the things that I know you guys care a lot about, and certainly something that we've seen in our research with all of our clients that we work with, is it's not about glossing over the data or making data just a black box, an amorphous black box. It's making sure that you understand the audience that you're actually presenting to, and the fact that they may not need to see every single bit of methodology about how you got there. They want to see the result, but they do need to, and this is something I think you've run into. You were talking about a pitch that you guys did with WPXI.
Yes.
Right? And when you're in a meeting and you're caught with, okay, where did that data come from? How do you know that bagels were actually, highly correlated to New York State and all the rest? What do you do in those situations?
Right, so for us, there was really 3 pillars of how we make data work in those situations. The first of all, you have to have access to the data, which is I think the most obvious. The second piece is have an aggregation tool, RISA, right? So there's the tool, and then there is someone who actually understands the data. So I pretend to understand the data. Rachel actually understands the core data. But it's really important because depending upon the conversation, and in the example with PXI, we were doing something with Eaton Park. And we were going out and running a campaign, and we were leveraging television viewing behavior as a proxy to define an audience target of who we should be targeting and when. And what I thought, and it was literally just, hey, Rachel, you want to come up with me? She knew all about Eaton Park, familiar with the area from here, so I thought it would be great for her to come up. Walked into a room, and there was an army of television strategy people that are deep in the research, so I was way out of my element. And being able to look at the data, understand it very quickly from a visual perspective had a profound impact. So, I mean, granted, having Rachel there was probably the saving grace because she could entertain some of those next level questions and getting way deeper into the linear television strategy side of it. But the visualization piece, as we start to spot it out, was able to make them feel good that this wasn't just talk. We're actually ingesting the data and presenting in ways that are meaningful to them and that they can understand.
Here's a fun example. So as we're trying to make data and insights a part of everything that we do, we're going on sales calls. You bring little things to give to the client so they like you, remember you. We decided we were going to bring cupcakes, right? So we were going to Philadelphia. We were going to bring cupcakes. I said, well, let's put data on the cupcakes. So we got the cupcake maker to make little sugar wafer things, and we found that Philadelphia adults are 82% more likely to eat cupcakes, which there's a thing, I'm obsessed with food, I guess. But anyway, so it's fine. So anyway, we printed these things, it's small, and then I made sure that the source was in there because that was important. And the sellers were kind of teasing me that we had this tiny font that had the source on there. But no, it's important. You don't just make up that it's 82% more likely. It has to mean something. It has to come from somewhere. So yes, it's not glossing over. It's not dumbing down everything. It's just making sure that it's presented in the right way, and you have the quality to back it up.
So I'm curious also in terms of sales pitches in general, right? Frequently, salespeople will, walk into a situation. They'll have their slide deck, maybe with data, maybe without, and you walk in, and the pitch that you have isn't, in fact, what the client cares about, right? And you have to adapt and be agile, sort of on the spot. Can you describe a situation like that you've experienced, and how do you deal with those situations?
Well, those are not good situations. Well, hopefully you do good research ahead of time. That's another piece to it, right? So we have all of these consumer insights. How are we researching our clients so that we're preparing the correct thing? But one of the things I guess that the RISA allows us to do is be a little bit nimble. And also with civic science as well, we can ask certain questions that are more tailored than, say, someone like an Experian or a syndicated data provider would do, that allows you to be a little bit nimble. But I mean, I guess if I'm completely honest, you take the homework assignment and you come back with real data. You don't make it up. I mean, I know,
yeah, that's good. So just as an aside, just in case people don't realize, Civic Science is a Pittsburgh-based company. We work with them quite a bit, and we, in the media space, a lot of their data is being used all over the place. It's really innovative. There's a talk that's happening this afternoon to plug it. John Dick will be presenting, so just to make sure we have that. So why don't we open it up to the audience and see so there's a microphone. What questions do people have? We have a question right here.
Thank you. What a great talk.
Thanks.
I just wanted to say I loved your data visualization going on, and I was hoping you could talk a little bit more about the data visualization that you use.
Can you repeat that question if we didn't capture it?
Sure. So the question, this is not a plant in the audience, I don't know you. The question was that you really liked I think you said loved, but
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Well,
The data visualizations that were used in the presentation, and the question was asked, how did you make them?
well, so actually, Ryza is our tool for a lot of that, and so that's great. That's great feedback because before, right. So Ryza has been really useful to us for things like that because we have admittedly a pretty small research staff to create these types of things. We have a couple of designers, we have a couple of research analysts that are churning these out. And we were, before we had Ryza, we were in a situation where we're doing things in Excel and we're doing things in PowerPoint and we're manually mapping things and putting it into a mapping tool that gives us something and it doesn't look quite that great. So one of the things that we used to raise the bar was for Ryza, but it's always challenging to think of. I mean, that's one of the things that I find most fun is how do we present the data in a way that's interesting and like I particularly like the radar maps. That have been that have been a challenge for some people because it's different than you've seen, but I think it kind of tells the story. So you have to find the right visualization to tell the story.
You did it.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
I think one of
That's
the
great.
other points, though, in terms of good visualization is not overcomplicating things. So often in our industry, especially the standardized business intelligence tools that are out there, there's very little thought put into the actual output and visualization. We as data people are so thrilled that we found the answer, and here's the answer. You just have to find that cell in the table or the line amongst 10,000 other lines in a line chart or whatever it might be. Simplifying everything is important. And then the other aspect I think that Gamut does a really good job with is the visualizations fit to their brand. And so the colors that they're using, the line widths that they're using, the way that they're presenting the information on the screen is all directly tied to the brand identity that they have, which really does help it stick out and sort of be more prominent. And it's not something you've seen before because it's unique to them. And
Thank you.
yeah, without a commercial, it's just that the types of tool, like our tool allows our customers to do that for themselves so they can make visualizations that are theirs, that are reflecting the story that they really want to tell. Right. And the story part is also, I think, the other aspect of this, that it's not just the visualizations, it's how you're tying from one to the next to the next.
Yeah, I would that's a huge thing is the story. So it's very much a component, it's a piece, a large piece at times to come through. And the simplification is actually key because the great thing about data is you can be very bold when you present it. Whereas when you get much more maybe when you start to have conversations around advertising that are like philosophical, they're very opinion generated, and then from a sales perspective, you can run into people that maybe just don't agree with it at all. Whereas on the data side, as you're presenting it as part of a story that's unique to us and to that brand, the data can be bold and quick, and that's where the visualization is super simple. And then the larger story will carry you all the way through what that visualization is ultimately trying to accomplish. So it's great.
Excellent. I think we have another question.
Yeah, so Rachel, you mentioned wanting to empower consumers with this information that you've collected. I want to know if you've done any or plan to do any further analysis of what, once that reaches the public and how their reaction to that data. So if I don't want to be targeted at 11 a.m. or 11 p.m. for tomorrow morning, like how that will affect me and what, if you haven't, what you plan on doing or how that will react in general once they have this knowledge.
So so that's the other piece to it. So all of this is pretty much pre-campaign analysis that we would do in order to target, and then so what do we do with that after the ad is served, right? So is there a feedback loop that the guy says, no, please don't advertise to me or whatever? That exists in a lot of mechanisms for advertising, but also what ads are most effective? Clicking doesn't really happen anymore, so what are the other units of measurement that we're using for that? And snacks are interesting because you're probably not going to purchase a snack online, right? You're probably going to go to an off-store element. So that's a really exciting part of the equation that's continuing to grow with mapping effectiveness of a campaign to store traffic to sales, and that's just another data point that ultimately comes full cycle, right, to have that inform then the next time you have a campaign.
I think also it's important, if I'm catching perhaps the gist of your question from a slightly different direction, to understand the data that Gamut is working with and that most of our clients work with is not you as a person and your social security number and all that type of stuff. Right. It's aggregated information that sort of is broadly categorized, and you do that as part of the sales process. The actual delivery platforms, and this may actually be interesting, the delivery platforms that you work with, what type of targeting do they seem to allow, and are there policies that you look for in terms of allowing people to opt out and things like that from even in my zip code, I don't want to be identified type stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so we work with a ton of third-party data providers that exist out there. We were just talking about this. We ultimately vet these providers that they adhere to all the bylaws and privacy rights acts that are available specific to the data. And we basically leverage them to then target that specific audience. And then from a targeting capability, depending upon which products we may be talking about, we can do, obviously geography is the most obvious and the easiest one to do. We can start to hone that in very, very tight as we move into the mobile device world and getting into like almost pinpoint targeting. We can look at behavioral targeting, so exhibited behaviors online and what we're seeing those audiences do as being an indicator of intent to maybe do something else. And then we can look at offline data that ultimately gives us a lot of the demo data. So if we're looking at household incomes, gender, children in the household, et cetera, we're able to look at that and through various partnerships pair that with an online profile, all of which is anonymous to us from a naming convention, but really just this existence of either a desktop or mobile device.
There's another question back there.
So, Gamut, once you get your data from Risa or any of your providers, do you actually store it for data reuse, or do you always depend on your data providers to provide you fresh data all the time?
It is stored and used for trending purposes too. So yes, and yes, so it goes through Risa, and then we can trend on it and hold on to that too. Most of it is syndicated data, and then we also have our backend, our ad server data, which again is stored for trending purposes.
So yeah, Risa's function in this is to be that place where all the different data sets come together in one place. We store it over time per whatever the licenses are for that data, and then provide the tools that they need to constantly be getting access to the freshest versions of it, so they can build PowerPoint decks and presentations. There's a question over there.
I believe that most part of this data is in an unstructured format. Just curious to know how you apply aggregation rules on unstructured data.
Actually, most of the data that we deal with is in fact structured in some way. So the syndicated data that comes in, an example of syndicated data would be Nielsen overnights, which is basically ratings data for every single potential channel of television for the entire country, and when people are, the rating points, which is basically the measurement of how many people are watching in, I think it's 5-minute increments or whatever, whatever it is. Other data sets that are syndicated come from Polk, for example, which is all of the car registration data in the United States. So basically going back, a whole bunch of years, and it's all structured. It very much is very well structured. The hits and the logs and all the other stuff, most of that data is also structured. There's very little unstructured data that in the media space specifically is being used right now. And if it starts out in an unstructured way, there's some data sets from like Kantar and other places where they're collecting who watched, which ads are running when, kind of stuff. And that starts unstructured, but then companies like Kantar come in and actually bring structure to it before sending it to a clearinghouse like ours. Other questions?
I had a question regarding the behavioral targeting, and I was curious how you get the data for the same. I can understand the regional trends, but how on earth can you conclude that the one who eats a nutritious food is an open-minded? I mean, do you get data from Google or Facebook regarding that, or?
Right. So the data that we showed here was surveyed data. So you'll get the people will get a book and they'll fill it out and they'll say, I like to eat apples, right, or whatever. And then that is matched with other points within the data set. The other piece is the behavioral targeting that happens online, which is either from something like a cookie or maybe search behavior or maybe mobile behavior. And then we can tie that to, okay, so if it's mobile and they're searching and they were, you know, on a nutritional website or something like that. So that can be tied together there too.
There's a very large industry out there of survey companies, you know, that are, you know, Nielsen is actually a survey company, right, in terms of how it's measuring TV ratings and things like that. The one that you were referring to, I think, that was Experience.
Oh, this is Experience
yeah.
Simmons, yep. Mm-hmm.
So there are very large panels of survey respondents with basically people at these companies are then applying different types of statistical practices to make sure that they're getting representative samples and things like that. So there's a lot of sort of correction that happens in that data on the, you know, that you're getting. That type of data is updated maybe from Simmons Local, just from Experian is updated twice a year, just to give you an idea. The reason why, like, a civic science.
That's what I was just going to say. You know, so you have the survey data and that has its limits because it's, you know, maybe declared and you're filling out this book and it's so long and oh my God, who does that? Then you have, so we want to have the best data set that's available, and we think that that's a really great data set. We think that Nielsen obviously is, you know, one of the best for measuring television audiences, a ComScore for, you know, measuring online audiences. Where Civic Science is really unique and different is that it's way more recent than any of those have the power to be because they're so big and they have such a, you know, infrastructure in order to in fact gather the surveys and process them, right? Where Civic Science is doing it digitally, we launched a question about arthritic knees, right? So the Simmons data set had only about osteoarthritis, and one of our partners would say, okay, well that's great, but I'm really interested in arthritis of the knee. So what do we do with that? So with Civic Science, we were able to ask a question about that particular thing and have, you know, 1,000 respondents in a couple of days. So that helps us to look at both sets side by side. Okay, what does Simmons say? What does Civic Science say? And that helps us to, you know, vet them even further, comparing.
It's an interesting, I mean, just to build on the question a little bit, because the assumption I think that people have, and, you know, there have been a couple of questions around this, the assumption is that targeting is happening down to the person, like, you know, that ads are following me around all the time, like Minority Report or whatever, you know, is it Minority? Yeah. And, you know, and that data is, you know, we're all emitting data all the time, and all that data is actually being collected and used effectively all the time, no matter what. Sometimes it is. Like you were, can you describe that? You were talking about geographic wrapping. Can you just talk a little bit about like an example of a conference like this?
Yes, absolutely. So in the mobile's been a great, like a lot of the technology that's coming out around targeting and mobile has just been great to the advertising space, just because we can get so granular. So where historically when we looked at behavior, it was a cookie-based thing that basically anonymously looked at various sites you've been to, cookies drop, we create predefined segments that could last for 30 to 120 days before they fall off. Mobile's unique in that we really use location as context. And so we look at where you've been, and when I say you, this is not Big Brother, this is your device. It's completely anonymous, but we look at the device IDs, we look at where you've been, where you are now, and we try to bring those two together based on the performance of like people, so like models that look very much similar to this person in terms of where they've been, to ultimately drive to where we think you're going to go, and then we start to match some of that up. So an example could be, there's a ton of data people here in this room, right? All far more intelligent than me on data and scientific. So if I were hiring for a data scientist or of some high caliber data analyst, I could theoretically wrap the building with a mobile campaign where if you guys are getting bored with what I'm talking about and happen to have an app open, I might serve you an employment ad to come work for the company. So we can get very, very granular on some of that location-based targeting.
But not to any of the data scientists from Risa that are in the room.
Of course not. No poaching.
So on that front, actually, I'm gonna go with this theme a little bit. I think if it's okay, and we still have lots of time for questions. But I imagine that a bunch of people, I saw people like fidgeting a little bit, right, when we were talking about, you can target the people in this room, and it's not the individual people, but the fact that your device is here and that the ad is being served there. That's all because many of us have, as a default, location services turned on, right, in our devices. And I wonder, and this is more maybe just a general question, because I don't know if you have data on this or not, and I don't expect you to, but do you feel that over time, as we progress, will more and more people start to cloak themselves, as somebody mentioned earlier a little bit, and sort of try to remove themselves from that type of tracking? Where do you see this going in terms of, and how it affects advertising going forward?
This is where I can say it is now, and then Rachel, if you know where it's going, that would be awesome. But so here's what we know now, just doing a lot of mobile trainings with a lot of the partners and a lot of the national agencies that we work with, is that every time you download an app, and apps quite honestly are really the main conduit of mobile advertising, just because of the way that they're present, and the fact that they're always going. There's two things that happen when you download an app. There's a couple things, but the two main questions that are asked is location services enabled, like basically allowing that app to know where you are from a location standpoint, and then push notifications. And the reality is 92% of everybody, or 92% of the population will always just say yes. And so really for those people that choose no, we refer to you as the white unicorn, right? So we love it. White unicorns are totally cool. They typically have flip phones. But the other 92% don't. So there are interesting trends that are happening with some of the updates on the operating systems that are coming up in mobile that make it a little bit more front and center than maybe it has been historically. The ads aren't terribly offensive. When I say offensive, they're not messing up the user experience too much. So I don't see any huge trends in people not liking the ads, especially if they're relevant. But that said, there are more tool sets that are coming in to differentiate at the operating system level that could ultimately impact maybe that penetration. But I can tell you that right now the penetration of smartphones is so large and the audiences are so large that even when we try to get really, really granular, we still have so much scale to be able to deliver these ads that if that were to fluctuate a few points, I don't think it would kill it. I say that today, and with as fast as things are changing, it's quite possible that something could dramatically come in and change that, but I don't see that on the immediate horizon.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I can only speak for myself, right? I think a relevant ad is better than an irrelevant ad. So a marketer can't really make you do anything, right? They can only present their product to you, and whether or not that's offensive is ultimately up to the consumer, which you have the ability to turn that off. So I think it would be better to receive a relevant ad. But even if it doesn't, that's what I guess kind of makes this industry challenging and exciting, is that eventually maybe that goes away, right? Maybe people do cloak themselves in privacy, and we're still going to have to advertise to people. So, maybe it's a broader category, maybe it's something else, but yeah.
Okay. Any other questions? So it's interesting that you did mention hiring. I cannot possibly pass up an opportunity like this we didn't know to run the ad, actually, but I do want to say, here in Pittsburgh, there is a vibrant and growing startup community that is working on a lot of these different types of issues, Civic Science and Ryza and other companies, and all of us, literally right now, are hiring. So it's not just for my company, but for others. If you're interested in getting in sort of early on in the early days of trying to figure all this stuff out, there are tons of opportunities for people who have a lot of experience with data and marketing and sales and all kinds of other activities to join. So we certainly at Rise are hiring and growing fast, but lots of other companies are too. And through the Tech Council website, is a great place to find some of them. So,
how about a round of applause for them?
Thank you.